It started with a lie, the kind politicians are famous for. Only this time it wasn't about policy or promise, it was about love. And the worst part? I wanted to believe her. I never imagined my heart would be held hostage by someone who spent her life behind podiums and cameras, delivering speeches polished enough to slice glass. But there she was, standing in front of me, her voice steady for the world yet trembling when it was just us. She told me our love could never exist in daylight. And I, stupidly, let myself think the moonlight would be enough. Her name was Charlotte Hayes. Senator Charlotte Hayes of New York, 32 years old, the rising star of the Democratic Party, the kind of woman every network obsessed over. They called her the Iron Rose, beautiful, resilient, sharp. They never mentioned how she smelled faintly of lavender when she leaned in too close, or how her laugh when it slipped out, unguarded, could bring me to my knees. I was nobody in comparison. Just Ava Miller, a freelance writer trying to survive in D.C., juggling too many coffee-stained deadlines. My friends used to tease me for romanticizing strangers, turning the people I passed on the metro into protagonists of little stories. But I never thought I'd become entangled in one so dangerous, so raw, so impossible. We met on a rainy Thursday, the kind where umbrellas turn inside out, and the whole city smells like wet pavement. I'd been assigned to cover a grassroots rally, expecting the usual recycled promises. Then she stepped onto the stage. Charlotte. Her presence wasn't just magnetic, it was nuclear. She didn't just speak. She carved her words into the air, into people's hearts. Mine included. And when the rally was over, when the crowd had thinned and the rain was still relentless, I found myself sheltering under the same awning as her. She glanced at me, eyes like a storm bottled up, and for reasons I still don't understand, she smiled. Journalist or protester? She asked. Depends on the paycheck. I shot back and she laughed. God, that laugh. That was the beginning. Coffee 2 days later. A walk around the Capitol Mall the week after. Then a dinner in a quiet corner of Georgetown, where her security detail pretended not to notice the way her hand brushed mine under the table. By the time she kissed me under the soft glow of street lamps, I was already lost. But Charlotte belonged to the public, and I belonged to her shadows. We carved out a world behind locked doors, in hushed phone calls at midnight, in fleeting glances stolen during speeches I pretended to cover objectively. I told myself it was enough. Love, even hidden, was still love. Until the night she broke me with words that tasted like poison. This can't ever be public, Ava, she whispered, her forehead pressed to mine. Not now. Maybe not ever. If they find out, could end everything. My career. Your safety. Us. She said it like a fact. Like the sky being blue. Like gravity itself. And in that moment I hated her as much as I loved her. Because what is love if it must be denied to the world? I thought I understood sacrifice. I thought I could handle being the secret, the invisible half of her story. But secrets have a way of rotting, of growing sharp edges in the dark. And mine was cutting me open piece by piece. There were nights when she would hold me, whispering promises of someday, painting fantasies of a future where the world wouldn't care who she loved. I clung to those visions the way a drowning woman clings to driftwood. But daylight always came. And with it the cold reminder that someday wasn't today. Meanwhile, the world adored her. Magazine covers. Viral interviews. Young girls calling her their role model, their hope. I wanted to be proud. Instead, jealousy coiled in me like a snake. Because while they got to love her openly, even if only as an icon, I had to pretend I was nobody. I tried to distract myself with work. My editor piled on assignments and I said yes to all of them. But every word I typed felt hollow compared to the way she said my name when no one else was around. I'd be writing an article on urban housing reform, and all I could think about was how her lips tasted faintly of wine the night before. And then there were the nights she couldn't come. When politics pulled her away, when the city swallowed her whole. I'd stare at my ceiling, the silence thick, wondering if love was supposed to feel this lonely. But whenever I thought about leaving, I remembered the rain, the awning, her laugh, that first spark. And suddenly the idea of walking away felt like ripping out my own lungs. I loved her. I loved her in ways that terrified me. And maybe that was why I stayed. Everything shifted one night in late autumn. Charlotte had just delivered a blistering speech on education reform, one that set the internet on fire. But instead of going to the after-party, she showed up at my apartment, her hair still pinned, her eyes still fierce from the adrenaline. She didn't knock. She just walked in, locked the door, and kissed me like the world was ending. "Ava," she breathed, breaking the kiss, her hands trembling against my cheeks. "I can't keep doing this." My heart stopped. "You're leaving me." "No," she said quickly, desperately. "God, no. I can't stop loving you. That's the problem." And that's when I realized. The very thing that made her a great politician, the iron control, the unshakable discipline, was the same thing breaking us apart. She couldn't afford to lose control. And I was her greatest weakness. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered, "Then choose me. Just once. Choose me over them." Her silence was louder than any speech she'd ever given. And I knew deep down that she couldn't. That was when I understood the cruel truth. Love isn't always enough. But what I didn't know then, standing in my dimly lit apartment with her arms still around me, was that the story of us wasn't over. Not yet. Because some secrets refuse to stay buried. And some loves, no matter how forbidden, are too fierce to die quietly. It's strange how love can feel like both a lifeline and a cage. For weeks after that night in my apartment, Charlotte and I moved like two people balancing on a wire above a burning city, every step careful, every glance calculated, every word spoken with the weight of consequences pressing on our shoulders. She would come to me in fragments, 20 stolen minutes between strategy meetings, an hour in the quiet of her car after events, nights where her security detail pretended not to notice when she slipped away. And each time, her hands shook more than the last, her breath shorter, her eyes darker with exhaustion. I knew she was burning herself out. The media called her unstoppable, a force of nature. But behind closed doors, I saw the cracks spreading through her armor. I wanted to be the one who held her together. Instead, I felt like another fracture. One evening, she showed up unannounced again. She didn't say hello. She just collapsed onto my couch, kicked off her heels, and pressed her face into her hands. "They want me to run for higher office," she whispered. My chest tightened. "Higher? Governor first. Then maybe." She looked up, her eyes haunted. "Maybe president." The word felt like a death sentence. Not because I didn't believe in her, I did. More than anyone, but because every rung on her ladder meant more cameras, more scrutiny, more reasons for me to disappear. I forced a smile. "That's incredible, Charlotte. You'll change lives." Her lips trembled as she asked, "And what about yours? What about us?" I didn't have an answer. We started fighting. Not screaming matches, not door-slamming arguments. No, ours were worse. Quiet, sharp-edged conversations that cut without raising voices. "You missed my birthday," I told her once, my voice barely more than a whisper. "I was in Albany negotiating a budget," she replied flatly. "You could have called." I texted. "Charlotte, a text isn't the same thing as being here." She looked at me then, her eyes full of a pain she couldn't afford to show the world. "Do you think I don't want to be here? Do you think I don't lie awake at night wishing I could wake up next to you every morning? I'm trying to hold a state together, Ava. And at the same time, I'm trying to keep us from being destroyed by people who wouldn't think twice about turning our love into a scandal." Her words were knives, but the worst part was knowing she was right. Still, the loneliness was suffocating. I felt invisible, like a ghost haunting her life. And ghosts don't get happy endings. Then came the rally in Philadelphia. I wasn't supposed to be there. My editor had assigned me to cover another story, but I couldn't resist. I drove 3 hours just to stand in the crowd, just to see her in her element, just to remind myself why I loved her. She stood on that stage, fire in her veins, passion in her voice, commanding thousands like she was born for it. The audience roared. Reporters scribbled. Cameras flashed. And then I saw ether eyes scanning the crowd, just for a second, until they found mine. It was the briefest of connections, a flicker, but I felt it in every cell of my body. She was speaking to them, but she was looking at me. And in that moment I thought maybe, just maybe, it was worth it. But fate doesn't care about fleeting moments of hope. 2 weeks later, a tabloid article appeared. "Who is Charlotte Hayes' mystery companion?" The photos weren't damning blurry shots of us walking too close in Georgetown, another of me leaving her car at night. To anyone else it was nothing. But to people looking for cracks in her image, it was everything. Charlotte called me at dawn, her voice trembling. They're circling. Let it blow over, I said, trying to sound calm. It won't. They'll dig. They always dig. What do you want me to do? There was silence. Then softly, stay away from me. For now. Those words broke something in me. The weeks that followed were hell. I deleted her number 3 times and memorized it again just as quickly. I told myself to move on, but every time I passed the Capitol, every time I saw her face on a screen, my heart betrayed me. And then late one night my phone buzzed. A single text. I can't breathe without you. Come to me. I didn't hesitate. When I arrived at her townhouse, she was waiting at the door, hair loose, eyes red from crying. She pulled me inside and kissed me like I was oxygen, like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. We didn't speak much that night. Words were useless against the storm between us. All that existed was the desperate need to prove we still belonged to each other. Afterward, lying in her bed, she whispered into my hair. I'm terrified, Ava. Not of losing my career. Of losing you. I wanted to tell her she already was. But instead I held her tighter. The scandal didn't disappear. It grew. Rumors spread, whispers turned to headlines, and suddenly Charlotte's carefully crafted image was under siege. Commentators speculated about her secret personal life. Opponents smirked during interviews, hinting at skeletons in closets. Through it all, Charlotte stood tall in public. But behind closed doors she unraveled. One night, after a particularly brutal press conference, she slammed her phone against the wall. They're tearing me apart, she shouted, her voice shaking. And for what? For loving you. Tears streamed down my face. Then stop hiding it. Stop pretending I don't exist. Let them know. You don't understand, she snapped. This isn't just about me. This is about every bill I've fought for. Every family that counts on me. If they reduce me to a scandal, everything I've built will burn. And you got Ava, they'll crucify you. Do you think the media will be kind? They'll call you names, they'll dig into your past, they'll destroy your career. I can't let that happen. Her fear was raw, unfiltered. And for the first time I realized how much she was carrying, not just the weight of a state, but the weight of protecting me. But love and protection don't always speak the same language. That night, as she cried against my shoulder, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if love could survive being buried alive. And then came the betrayal. A leak. Not just photos this time. Emails. Texts. Words ripped from private moments, plastered across screens and headlines. Suddenly, the whispers weren't whispers anymore. They were accusations, confirmations, judgments. Senator Hayes in secret relationship with female journalist. My name. My face. Everywhere. My editor fired me. My inbox filled with threats and cruel messages. Paparazzi camped outside my building. My life was no longer mine. And Charlotte was drowning in political fallout. Colleagues distanced themselves. Donors threatened to pull funding. Opponents sharpened their knives. But worst of all, she pulled away from me. Not because she didn't love me, but because she thought she was saving me. When I confronted her, she broke. Ava, don't you see? If we stay together, they'll destroy us both. Her words felt final. And for the first time, I wondered if love really could be worth this much pain. The night she told me to let go, I walked out of her townhouse into the freezing DC air, and felt like I'd left half my soul behind. Cameras still flashed from across the street. Reporters still whispered into microphones, but their noise blurred into static. My chest was hollow, my steps mechanical, like I wasn't Ava anymore. I was just the ghost of someone who used to believe love could conquer anything. I stayed away for weeks. No texts, no calls, no emails. The silence between us was suffocating, but it was safer than feeding the fire the press had lit. I tried to rebuild a semblance of normal life, new freelance gigs under pseudonyms, therapy sessions where I only managed to cry instead of talk, long walks around Lincoln Park just to remember how to breathe. But forgetting Charlotte? Impossible. Every headline with her name still sent a knife twisting into me. Every photo of her at a podium, eyes fierce but tired, reminded me that she was fighting battles I couldn't see. And every night, when the city quieted, I imagined her lying in bed, staring at the same kind of ceiling, missing me too. The scandal didn't fade. If anything, it escalated. Conservative outlets painted her as immoral, while progressive ones split between defending her and demanding transparency. Protesters gathered outside her office, some with rainbow flags, others with signs that dripped hate. I wanted to protect her, to stand by her side, but I knew she would never let me. Until one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message I never expected. Meet me. Same coffee shop as the beginning. Midnight. My pulse roared in my ears. I didn't think, I just went. The coffee shop was closed, but she was there, waiting by the door with her hood up. When she saw me, her whole body sagged with relief. Ava, she whispered, and suddenly months of silence collapsed between us. We didn't hug right away. We just stood there staring, the streetlight carving shadows across her face. She looked thinner, older somehow, as if the weight of the world had carved lines into her skin. But her eyes, those storm-filled eyes, still held me captive. I shouldn't be here, I said. I know, she replied. But I had to see you. And then she broke, stepping forward, clutching me like she was drowning. I felt her tears soak into my jacket, felt her shoulders shake against me, and all the walls I'd built shattered in an instant. I can't do this without you, she confessed. I thought I could protect you by pushing you away, but all I've done is destroy both of us. I held her face in my hands, forcing her to look at me. Then stop hiding. Stop pretending. Charlotte, if this is love, it can't live in the dark forever. Her lips parted like she wanted to argue, but instead she kissed me. Right there on a public sidewalk under a streetlight with the risk of cameras in every shadow. It was reckless, dangerous, and the most honest thing we had ever done. That kiss lit the fuse. The next morning, photos of us exploded across the internet. The caption was simple, brutal. Senator Hayes no longer hiding. The backlash was immediate. Some praised her bravery. Others condemned her indecency. Talk shows dissected us like we were characters in a play instead of real people. My inbox filled again, half love, half venom. But this time Charlotte didn't retreat. She stood at a podium in front of hundreds of flashing cameras, her hands gripping the sides, her voice steady. Yes, she said, looking straight into the lenses. The rumors are true. I am in love with a woman. Her name is Ava Miller. And I refuse to be ashamed of that. The room erupted, gasps, shouts, applause, outrage. Reporters shouted questions, microphones shoved forward, chaos brewing. But Charlotte didn't flinch. For too long we've let fear dictate who gets to love openly and who has to hide. I'm done hiding. If that costs me votes, if that costs me power, so be it. But I won't let it cost me my heart. I watched from the back of the room, tears streaming down my face. For the first time she wasn't just my secret. She was mine in front of the world. Of course it wasn't a fairy tale. The days after her speech were brutal. Donors pulled out. Opponents ran attack ads, framing her as unstable. Anonymous threats came in by the dozens. But something else happened too. Letters, emails, voices, young girls who saw themselves in us, older couples who had hidden their love for decades, parents who said her courage gave them hope for their children. Our love, once a liability, had become a symbol. At night, when we were finally alone, Charlotte would curl into me, her body trembling from exhaustion. Do you regret it? She'd ask. Never, I'd answer, brushing hair from her face. Not if it means we get to be real. She'd smile then, soft and unguarded, and whisper, someday, Ava, they'll stop caring. And when that day comes, we'll walk down the street hand in hand like it's the easiest thing in the world. And for the first time I believed her. Months passed. The storm didn't vanish, but it calmed. Charlotte's approval ratings dipped, then plateaued. The firebrands shouting for her resignation grew quieter, as new scandals replaced ours in the cycle of outrage. And through it all we learned to live. We learned how to dodge paparazzi on date nights, how to laugh at memes made of us, how to turn hate mail into scrap paper for grocery lists. We learned how to fight without breaking, how to love without fear. One spring evening, as cherry blossoms painted the city pink, Charlotte took my hand openly in public for the first time. We walked past the Capitol, tourists snapping photos, people recognizing her. A few stared, a few whispered, but no one stopped us. Feels almost normal, I teased. She squeezed my hand, her smile quiet but radiant. This is just the beginning. And maybe it was. Because love, even forbidden love, has a way of rewriting the rules. I don't know what the future holds. Charlotte might run for president one day. I might publish a book about everything we survived. Or maybe we'll just keep walking streets lined with cherry blossoms, learning to be ordinary in a world that refuses to let us be. But I do know this. She was worth every secret, every headline, every broken piece of me. Because when she finally chose me, she didn't just choose love. She chose truth. And truth, once spoken, can never be silenced again. People like to believe that once the truth is out, everything falls neatly into place. That once you stop hiding, love magically becomes easy. They don't talk about the long nights of doubt, the arguments over safety protocols, the relentless judgment from strangers who think your heart is their business. The truth is, coming out publicly didn't solve everything, it created 1,000 new problems. But it also set us free. And freedom, I learned, is messy. Charlotte's life shifted overnight. Her staff had to adapt to the glare of a new kind of spotlight. Suddenly, every campaign event had protesters waving rainbow flags beside others screaming slurs. Every interview included questions about her lifestyle, as though love were a policy decision. And me? My anonymity evaporated. People recognized me in grocery stores, whispered in coffee shops, tagged me on social media. Some messages were kind, "You give me hope. Thank you for existing." Others were cruel enough to make me throw my phone across the room. But through it all, Charlotte never wavered. She didn't backtrack, didn't apologize for loving me. When cameras asked if she regretted her admission, she looked straight into the lens and said, "Love isn't something you regret." Hearing her say that publicly, with a calm fierceness that defied everyone trying to cut her down, it stitched something in me back together. Still, our private world was fragile. One night she came home late, shoulders heavy, tie loosened, exhaustion carved into every line of her face. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. "They want me to consider stepping down," she murmured. My stomach dropped. Because of us? Because of perception? Because of optics? Because apparently being in love with you makes me unfit to govern. She laughed bitterly, but her eyes glistened. I knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "Charlotte, if you quit now, they win. They'll use us as proof that love makes women weak. You fought too hard to let them take that from you." Her gaze softened, pain flickering into gratitude. "You always know how to fight for me." "Not just for you," I corrected. "For us." That night we didn't make love. We just lay together, bodies entwined, hearts beating in sync, whispering promises into the dark. Promises that we would outlast the noise. The turning point came at a town hall in Boston. A young girl, maybe 16, stood at the microphone, her hands trembling. She looked at Charlotte with wide, tearful eyes. "Senator Hayes," she said, her voice breaking, "my parents don't accept me because I'm gay. But when I saw you on TV saying you love a woman and you weren't ashamed, I felt like maybe I'm not broken. So thank you. Please don't stop being who you are." The room fell silent. Cameras clicked. Charlotte's throat worked as she swallowed emotion. She walked off the stage, crossed the room, and hugged that girl tightly. "This is why I won't hide," she said into the microphone when she returned. "Because no one should grow up thinking they're broken for loving who they love." The applause was thunderous. And in that moment I knew we'd turned a corner, not just for us, but for something bigger. Over time the vitriol dulled. Not vanished, never fully gone, but dulled. News scandals replaced hours in the 24-hour news cycle. Charlotte's approval ratings stabilized. Donors cautiously returned. And we learned to live without apology. We walked hand in hand down crowded streets. We hosted dinners for friends who toasted to love surviving the headlines. We traveled to small towns where people approached us quietly, thanking us for giving them courage. It wasn't easy. It was never easy. But it was ours. 1 year later, on a quiet evening by the Potomac, Charlotte surprised me. We were walking, the sunset painting the water gold, when she stopped, turned to me, and took both my hands. Her eyes were shimmering, vulnerable in a way that made my chest ache. "Ava," she said softly, "you once asked me to choose you. Tonight I'm asking if you'll choose me. Not in secret, not in pieces, but fully. For the rest of our lives." And from her pocket, she pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, silver, catching the last light of day. Tears blurred my vision. My laugh came out choked and shaky. "Charlotte Hayes, are you seriously proposing to me with Secret Service agents probably watching from the bushes?" She grinned, uncharacteristically shy. They promised to look away. I pressed my forehead to hers, my heart bursting. Yes, I whispered. 1,000 times yes. When she slid the ring onto my finger, the world didn't stop spinning. The press didn't disappear. Politics didn't become less brutal. But none of it mattered. Because in that moment we weren't senator and journalist. We weren't scandal or headlines. We were just two women in love. The wedding wasn't grand. No cameras, no headlines. Just a small gathering in a friend's backyard, strings of fairy lights glowing above us, the scent of lilacs on the breeze. My mother cried when she hugged Charlotte. Her father clapped me on the back and told me, "Take care of her, she forgets to eat when she's busy." We exchanged vows we'd written ourselves, raw and imperfect but real. "I used to think love had to be hidden to survive," Charlotte told me, her voice shaking as tears slipped down her cheeks. "But you showed me that love, when it's real, only grows stronger in the light. I promise never to hide from you again." And when it was my turn, I said, "I fell in love with a woman the world tried to keep for itself. But tonight I give her back to herself and I take her as mine. Not in shadows. Not in secret. But here where everyone can see." Our kiss was greeted with cheers and laughter. And for the first time it didn't feel reckless. Felt right. Years later, when people ask me how I survived the chaos, I tell them the truth. I didn't survive it alone. Charlotte and I built a life out of fire and storm, out of whispers and headlines, out of pain that could have broken us. But instead, it forged us into something stronger. We learned that love isn't about perfection or safety. It's about showing up, even when the world is watching. It's about choosing each other again and again, no matter how heavy the cost. And though the world once told us our love had to be hidden forever, we proved them wrong. 'Cause here we are. Still standing. Still choosing. Still in love. And finally gloriously free. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.